Something happened to me a few weeks ago, and I have not been able to stop thinking about it. I was sitting at my desk, late at night. The room was quiet, and I decided to try a little experiment. I closed my eyes, and I started counting. Just counting in my head. 1, 2, 3, 4. I was aiming for exactly 1 minute, 60 seconds. When I figured I had reached 60, I opened my eyes and looked at the clock on the wall. The clock said 87 seconds had gone by. I had been off by almost half a minute. And the strange part, the part that has been bothering me ever since, is that when I was 20 years old and I tried this exact same experiment, I would have been off by maybe 2 seconds. Maybe 3. So what changed? The clock did not change. The seconds did not change. Time, the actual physical thing out there in the universe, kept doing what time does. Whatever happened happened to me, inside my head. And here is the thing that should make you sit up straight. It is happening to you too. Every birthday it gets a little worse. The years get shorter. The summers go by faster. You blink, and a decade is gone. And nobody, and I mean nobody, has been able to give you a clean answer about why. This is a strange kind of mystery. It is not a mystery about the universe out there. It is a mystery about the universe in here. Behind your eyes. The thing we are going to investigate together tonight is this question. Why does time speed up as you get older? Why does a single summer when you are 8 years old feel like an entire civilization? And a single year when you are 50 feels like a long weekend? Something is going on. Something measurable. Something we can pick apart, the way a watchmaker pulls apart a watch. So that is what I want to do tonight. I want to lay all the suspects on the table. Look at each one. Cross-examine each one. And then, near the end, I want to show you something that I think is going to bother you. Because the answer to this puzzle, the real answer, is not just a curiosity. It changes how you ought to think about your life. Or, at the very least, it changes what you think you are doing when you live it. Let me start by telling you what we know. We know it is not a hallucination. There have been studies. People in their teens, people in their 20s, people in their 50s, people in their 70s, all ask the same question. How long do you think 1 minute is? You sit them down with a stopwatch. You say, tell me when you think 1 minute has passed. The young people are pretty good at it. The old people consistently undershoot. They think a minute is up when only 45 or 50 seconds have actually gone by. The clock in their head is running slow. Or, to put it another way, the world outside their head is running fast. Now you might say, that is a small effect. A few seconds in a minute. Big deal. But scale it up. If your minute clock is running 10% slow, then your year clock is running 10% slow. And after 50 years of running 10% slow, you have lost 5 entire years. 5 years that the universe says happened, but your inner sense of duration says no, those did not really happen. So this is a real effect. It shows up in laboratories. It shows up in everybody. The question is, what is causing it? And there are some strong candidates. Let me introduce our first suspect. His name is Pierre Janet. He was a French philosopher and psychologist. He lived in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. And in the year 1897, Janet proposed something so simple, so clean, that for almost a century after he said it, people kept repeating it as if it were obvious. Here is what he said. Take a child of 8 years old. 1 year in the life of an 8-year-old is 1/8 of everything that child has ever experienced. That is 12.5% of their total existence. That is an enormous fraction. It is a slab of time bigger than anything else in the room, because there is nothing else in the room. Now take an adult of 50. 1 year in the life of a 50-year-old is 1/50th of total existence. That is 2%. 2% of everything you have ever known. So it stands to reason, Janet said, that the year ought to feel about 6 times shorter to the 50-year-old than to the 8-year-old. The year itself has not changed. It is still 365 days. But its proportion to the rest of your life has shrunk. so it feels small. This is a very tidy explanation. People love it. You will hear it repeated in books, in articles, at dinner parties for the rest of your life. And I want to admit, when I first heard it, I thought, well, that is it. Mystery solved. Janet figured it out. We can all go home and have a beer. But then I started chewing on it, and I started noticing things that did not fit. Let me give you an example. Imagine you are 40 years old, and you spend a long weekend in a city you have never visited. 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now imagine you are 40 years old, and you spend 3 days at home doing your normal routine. Same 3 days. Same 40-year-old. According to Janet's theory, both of these stretches should feel exactly the same length. 3 days over 14,600 days. The same fraction of life either way. But they do not feel the same. They do not even come close. The weekend in the new city, when you look back on it, feels like a week. Maybe longer. The weekend at home, when you look back on it, feels like a Tuesday afternoon. So the proportional theory cannot be the whole story. Because the proportion did not change, something else did. Here is another problem with Janet. According to his theory, your sense of time slowing down or speeding up should be perfectly smooth. Each year a little faster than the last, in a smooth, predictable curve. But that is not what people report. People report years that flew by, and years that crawled. They report a summer when they were 19 that lasted forever, and a year when they were 32 that they can barely find at all. The proportional theory predicts a smooth ramp. Real life shows a chaotic landscape, hills and valleys and cliffs. So Janet is not wrong, exactly. There is something there, some piece of the truth. But he is not the criminal we are looking for. He is, at most, an accomplice. Let us put him aside. Bring in suspect number 2, the frame rate of the brain. You are not, as you sit there listening to me, watching reality the way a movie camera watches reality. A movie camera takes maybe 24 pictures every second, and it stitches them together to make motion. Your brain is doing something messier and stranger. It is sampling the world, jumping its eyes around in tiny saccades, building up a picture, comparing it to memory, predicting what is next, correcting itself when the prediction fails, sending little reports up the chain of command. All of this happens fast, much faster than you are aware of. And here is the thing the laboratory people have figured out. Children do this faster than adults. A child's nervous system processes more events per second of clock time than an adult's nervous system does. There is some hard evidence for this. Researchers have shown people flickering lights and asked them to detect when the flicker becomes a steady glow. Younger eyes can see the flicker at higher frequencies. Older eyes blur it out at lower frequencies. The ability to distinguish two events as separate, rather than as one smeared event, drops as you get older. Reaction time follows the same pattern. The speed at which signals travel along your nerves drops slightly with age. The chemistry of the synapse, the little gap where one nerve cell talks to the next one, changes. The brain itself, by the time you are 50, is processing information at a slightly different rate than it did at 15. Slower, less granular, less detailed per second. Now think about what that means. If you are running, let us say, 10 frames per second of subjective experience, and the world is going by at the world's fixed rate, you are going to take in less of it, less detail, less texture, fewer little events stuffed into each tick of the clock. So when you look back on a year, the year feels thin, like a book printed in large type with wide margins. There is less in it. Compare that to a child. A child running at, say, 15 frames per second is taking in 50% more events per minute than you are. Their year is the same number of minutes as yours, but it has 50% more stuff in it. So the year feels longer, because, in a real sense, more happened. This is a much more interesting theory than Janet's. It has teeth. There is biology behind it. There are measurements, but it has its own problems. Because if frame rate were the whole story, then people who do laboratory tasks that depend on speed should report time slowing down in proportion to their reaction time. And they do not. Exactly. The relationship is messier. Also, you would expect a smooth slowdown, again with age. And again, that is not what we observe. People report wild variation. Two siblings the same age can report completely different time experiences. So frame rate is doing something. It is part of the story. But it is also not the criminal. It is another accomplice. The investigation continues. Bring in suspect number 3. And this one, I think, is the closest to the real culprit. But hold on. We are not done yet. I want you to keep your suspicions up. I want you to keep questioning. The third suspect goes by a few names. Some people call it the novelty hypothesis. Some call it memory density. Some call it the holiday paradox. Whatever you want to call it, the idea is this. The mind does not actually have a clock for the past. When you ask yourself how long ago something was, your brain does not reach into a filing cabinet and pull out a date stamp. It cannot. It does not work that way. Instead, it estimates. It looks at the memory and asks, how much stuff is in here? How much detail? How many distinct moments? And from that quantity of stuff, the brain guesses the duration. More stuff equals longer. Less stuff equals shorter. Let me give you a vivid example. Think back to your first kiss. Whoever you were, however old you were, wherever it happened, think about it now. You can probably reconstruct that scene in remarkable detail. You can remember the room or the place, the light, the feeling in your stomach, the smell of the air, maybe what you were wearing, maybe what they were wearing. You have a thick memory of that moment, heavy with information. Now think about last Tuesday, just regular last Tuesday. Most of you cannot remember last Tuesday at all. You can remember it was Tuesday because Tuesdays follow Mondays. But the Tuesday itself is gone. There was nothing distinct in it. Nothing your brain saw fit to keep. So your brain, very efficiently, threw it away. And here is the kicker. If I asked you how long ago your first kiss was, and how long ago last Tuesday was, your brain would do an interesting calculation. It would feel the weight of the first kiss memory, the thickness, the richness, and it would say, that was a long time ago. Even if it was, in fact, only 6 years ago. And it would feel the lightness of the last Tuesday memory, the emptiness, and it would say, that was practically yesterday. Even if it was, in fact, 8 days ago. The brain is a quantity of stuff detector, not a clock. It uses the amount of memory as a proxy for how much time has passed. And that is a fine system, most of the time, because in evolutionary terms, more stuff usually does mean more time. The cave you slept in for one night has thin memory. The cave you slept in for 1,000 nights has thick memory. So the brain learns to map thickness to duration. Beautiful little hack. Works fine. Until you get into modern life, where some weeks contain almost nothing your brain considers worth keeping, and your sense of duration starts to lie to you. Now this brings us to the holiday paradox, which is one of the strangest little puzzles in the whole investigation. You go on a holiday, 2 weeks, new country, new food, new language, new streets. You do not know which way is north. While you are on the holiday, time seems to drag in the most beautiful way. Each day feels enormous. You wake up on what you think is the third day, and you find out it is only the second. Then you come home, and here is the puzzle. When you look back on the holiday, 2 weeks later, the holiday still feels long, much longer than the 2 weeks at home that followed it. So when you are inside the new experience, time feels long. And when you remember the new experience, time also feels long, both directions. The novelty stretches time forward and backward at the same time. Now compare with routine. When you are inside a routine week, time feels normal, maybe a little slow because you are bored, but normal. Then when you remember that routine week, it has collapsed to nothing. The boredom that felt long while you were in it disappears the moment you turn around and look back at it. The routine compresses in retrospect. The novelty stays expanded. This tells us something important. The thing that determines how long a stretch of time feels in memory is not how it felt while you were living it. The two are different mechanisms. Living it time and remembering it time are two different machines with two different rules. And the rule for remembering it time is, more or less, how much novelty was in there. How much new information did your brain decide to record? That is what controls the felt length of your past. Now I want to tell you about an experiment I did on myself a long time ago. This is the kind of thing you can do without a laboratory. You just need a quiet room and a wristwatch. I wanted to know how I count time inside my head. So I started counting. 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 60, trying to hit exactly 1 minute. I did this hundreds of times. After enough trials, I got pretty good at it. I could hit 60 seconds, plus or minus a second, reliably. That was my baseline. So I started asking, what could I do while counting? Could I count and read at the same time? I tried it. I could read silently and keep counting at the same time, no problem. The count came out fine. Then I tried talking. The moment I started talking out loud, I lost the count. Could not do both. Whatever was happening when I talked was using the same machinery I used to count. So they fought, and the count lost. I had a friend named John Tukey, a brilliant fellow, very sharp, a mathematician. I told him about this, and he said, "That is funny, because I can count and talk at the same time." So we tried, and it was true. He could count and talk at once. But, and here is the kick, he could not count and read at the same time. The exact opposite of me. We puzzled over this for a while, and we figured out something. I was counting using my voice, internally. The little voice in my head was saying 1, 2, 3, and when I tried to talk out loud, I was trying to use the same voice machinery for two things, and it broke. But I could read just fine, because reading uses my eyes, separately from my inner voice. Tukey, on the other hand, was counting using his eyes, internally. He was visualizing the numbers, like a stopwatch in his mind. So he could talk freely, because his voice machinery was free. But he could not read, because his eye machinery was busy showing him imaginary numbers. What does this teach us about time? It teaches us something profound. Our internal sense of duration, the thing we call subjective time, is not a single thing. It is built out of different brain machinery for different people. It is fragile. It can be interfered with by the strangest things. A casual conversation, a book in your lap, the position of your eyes. And if it can be interfered with by reading or talking, it can certainly be interfered with by something as big as getting older. Your machinery is changing all the time. The thing you are using to measure how long this minute lasted is not the same thing you used last year, or last decade, or when you were 10 years old. The ruler is changing. So of course the measurement comes out different. We were never using a real ruler. We were using a little jury-rigged thing made out of voice, or vision, or memory, or whatever happened to be cheap and available. And that thing has been quietly drifting our whole lives. All right. Let us take stock of where we are in this investigation. I have laid out 3 suspects: Janet's proportional theory, the frame rate of the brain, and the density of memory. Each of them has a piece of the truth. None of them is the whole story. But the third suspect, the memory density theory, is doing the most heavy lifting. So now I want to put it all together and tell you what I think the real answer is. And I told you something disturbing was coming. So get ready. Here is the real answer. You do not actually experience time. You reconstruct it. The thing you call your past, the years and decades and the long stretch of life behind you, is not a recording. It is a reconstruction your brain is doing right now, this second, on the fly, based on whatever crumbs of memory it can dig up at this moment. There is no tape playing in your head. There is no ledger. There is just a pile of fragments. And an estimator that looks at the pile and says, that pile is about this big, must have taken about this long. And the more you live the same way, the same routines, the same drives to work, the same conversations, the same meals, the more your brain throws away. Not because anything is wrong with you. The brain is being efficient. It only keeps the surprising stuff, the redundant stuff, the predictable stuff, the stuff that fits the pattern, that goes in the trash. And if nothing in your week is surprising, the brain keeps almost nothing. You wake up on Monday, and by the next Monday you cannot remember what happened in between, because nothing happened in between that broke the pattern. There was nothing to keep. So you wake up at 50, and you wonder where the years went. They did not go anywhere. They just did not get written down. Most of them were so similar to the years before that your brain quietly compressed them. 20 years that look basically the same get filed as one big lump labeled, and I am paraphrasing, my 30s and 40s, more or less the same. Nothing too remarkable. And when you ask your brain how long that lump was, it estimates from the size of the file, which is small, because most of the data was deduplicated. So your brain reports back, oh, that was pretty short. And you think, my God, where did my life go? That is the trick. That is the disturbing part. Your life feels short because most of it has been deleted. Not by anyone else. By you. By the perfectly natural operation of a perfectly healthy brain that did not see any reason to store last Tuesday, or the Tuesday before that, or the 700 Tuesdays before those. They all looked the same. They all said the same things. They all ate the same lunch. So they all became one Tuesday in your memory. And that one Tuesday is short, because it is just one Tuesday, even though the universe knew there were 700 of them. Now there is an old idea that I want to tear apart. The idea that what you really need to do to slow down time is to be more mindful, to be more present, to pay more attention to each moment. There is a kernel of truth in this, but also a deep mistake, because mindfulness, as it is usually described, is about feeling time slow down while you are inside it, about making the present moment feel rich and full. And that is fine. It feels nice. But here is the problem. Living at time and remembering at time are different machines, remember? Just because you make the present feel rich while you are in it does not mean the brain is going to record more of it. You can sit on a meditation cushion for an hour and feel each second beautifully, and at the end of the hour your brain might still throw the whole thing away, because nothing surprising happened. You sat, you breathed. The cushion did not change. There was no new information. So the file gets compressed. That meditation hour, in your memory 2 months later, will be indistinguishable from every other meditation hour. They will fuse into one generic memory of meditating. And one generic memory is short. The thing that actually creates remembered time, durable subjective time, is not present moment richness. It is novelty. It is your brain encountering things it has not categorized before. New places, new people, new skills, new problems, new emotions. Anything that does not fit neatly into an existing folder. Because when something does not fit, the brain has to make a new folder, and a new folder is a new memory marker, and new memory markers are what your duration estimator counts. So the trick to making your life longer is not to slow down. The trick is to keep encountering things you have never encountered before. Even small things. New routes home, new foods, new books, new conversations with people you would normally avoid. Anything to break the pattern, to force the brain to allocate a new file rather than appending to an old one. And here is something practical that comes from this. When you were a child, you did not have to try. Everything was new. The world had 1,000 new things in it every day. You did not need to plan novelty. You walked outside, and there it was. A bug you had never seen, a word you had never heard, a feeling in your chest that did not have a name yet. So your childhood summers got recorded in enormous Baroque detail. Every leaf of those summers got a fresh folder. And when you remember them now, the folders are still there, fat and full, and they make your childhood feel like it took 1,000 years. As it should. Because in subjective time, in real psychological time, it did. You lived more in those years than you have lived since. Not because the years were longer, because the years were denser. Then you grow up, and the world stops giving you free novelty. You have to go and find it. You have to work for it. And most adults do not. Most adults settle into routines because routines are efficient, because routines pay the rent, because routines are how you survive. And there is nothing wrong with routine. Routine is how civilization is built. But there is a hidden cost. The cost is that your brain, doing its job, deduplicates the routine. And as the routine compounds, more and more of your life gets compressed into smaller and smaller files, until you turn around and you cannot remember a whole decade. It is just there in your head as one folder, marked, my 40s. Let me give you the kindest version of this. There is a way to think about it that makes it less depressing. Consider how the brain might be designed by evolution. Evolution does not care about your subjective sense of duration. Evolution cares about whether you survive long enough to reproduce. So the brain is built to remember things that might come up again, things that might be useful. The first time you saw a particular kind of snake, you remember. The 8,000th time you walked from the cave to the river, you do not remember. Because if you had to remember every walk, your brain would be full of walks, and there would be no room for snakes. So the brain is by design a novelty filter. It throws away the predictable to make room for the surprising. From an engineering point of view, this is a brilliant design. From the point of view of the person inside the brain, asking where did my life go, it is a tragedy. Now all of this so far has been about psychology, about what is happening inside your head. But I want to circle back briefly to the physics, because the physicists have a very different story to tell about time. The physicists will tell you, correctly, that there is no special meaning to subjective time. Out there, in the universe, time is a coordinate. It is a thing that ticks, modified slightly by gravity and motion in ways Einstein figured out, but otherwise democratic. Every second is the same as every other second, as far as the laws of physics are concerned. The universe does not care that you cannot remember last Tuesday. The universe is keeping perfect track. Every single second of your life happened. Every single second is, in some sense, still there, embedded in the fabric of space-time, real and unchangeable. The universe has the long version, the director's cut, with every Tuesday in it. Take that as scientifically true, because it is. Then come back inside your skull. Look at the time you have actually lived, the time you can actually remember, the time that has actually shaped you. None of those seconds are equal. Some seconds in your life were enormous. Some hours took up entire chapters in the book of you. Some entire years are summarized by one word. Boring, average, same. And those years are essentially gone, from your point of view. They left no fingerprint. They might as well not have happened, as far as the only person who lives in your head is concerned. From the universe's point of view, they happened. From your point of view, they did not. Two different clocks, both telling the truth, completely disagreeing. This is, I think, the most honest way to put it. There is the time of physics, which is real and uniform. And there is the time of psychology, which is real and absolutely not uniform. Both are real. Both matter. But you do not live in physics time. You live in psychology time. The clocks on the wall are for the universe. The clock that tells you how long your life was, when you look back on it from the end, is the one inside your head. And that clock is not running steadily. That clock is running on novelty, on surprise, on memory density. And if you do not feed it, it slows down to almost nothing. I want to tell you something else that follows from all this. Something I find a little hopeful, actually. There are moments in some people's lives, late in life, when subjective time slows down again. People who suddenly get sick, or move to a new city, or fall in love when they had not expected to, or take up a new craft at 70. These people often report that the months stretch out again, that a year feels like a year again, instead of a long weekend. They have not become children. Their frame rate has not gone back up. Their proportional theory has not changed. What has happened is that they have started feeding the novelty machine again. Their brain is laying down new folders. Their memory is getting denser. So their sense of duration is filling out. They are getting some of their life back, not by adding seconds to the clock, By making the seconds they already had count. So this is what I think the real lesson is. And I will be honest with you, this is the part I find most useful. Not interesting. Useful. The lesson is that you have some control over how much life you have. Not over how many years you get. That is between you and your genes and your luck. But over how many of those years feel like years. Over how much of your past feels real when you look back at it. That part is mostly up to you. And the way you control it is by deciding, week by week, whether you are going to give your brain something it has never seen before, or whether you are going to give it the same thing it saw last week, and last month, and last year. If you give it the same thing, the brain does what brains do. It throws the new copy away and keeps the old one. So the new week vanishes into the old week. They merge. The merged file gets a little fatter, but only a little, because most of the new information was redundant. And in your memory, 6 months from now, you will not be able to tell the new week from the old. They will be 1 week, and 1 week is short. If you give it something genuinely new, the brain makes a new folder. The new week is preserved. The new week is real, in retrospect. 6 months from now, you will be able to find that week, separate from the others, with its own little texture and weight, and it will make your life feel longer. Not because more time passed, but because more time is recoverable. I want to give you a homework assignment. I am almost done. Tonight, before you go to sleep, lie there for a moment and try to remember last week. Go through it day by day, if you can. How much can you actually find? How much detail is there? How many distinct events? Be honest with yourself. For most of you, the answer is going to be uncomfortable. Most of last week is gone. Now ask yourself, how much of last month? Last year? Last decade? Where did it go? It went nowhere. It just was not worth keeping. The brain saw the patterns repeating, and it made the very reasonable decision that there was nothing in there worth a separate folder. So the years got merged into one big folder, labeled basically the same, and then your life got short. Now ask yourself the question that I think should haunt you, gently, but seriously. What about next week? Is there going to be anything in next week that is worth keeping? Anything you could not have done last week? Anything that you have not done 1,000 times before? If the answer is no, then your brain is going to delete next week too, calmly, efficiently, without consulting you. And the week after, and the week after that, until one day you wake up and you look around and you wonder where your life went. And the answer will be nowhere. It just was not worth keeping. That is the trick. That is what I wanted to show you. Time is not running out. Time is being thrown away by the perfectly normal operations of a perfectly healthy brain, working exactly the way evolution designed it to work, on the assumption that the routine is not worth remembering. So your only protection, and this is something nobody can do for you, is to give your brain something it has never seen before. Something it must keep. Something it cannot file under same as last week. Make tomorrow a little strange. Make next week a little unfamiliar. Make next year contain something the past 40 years did not contain. Otherwise, the years will keep shrinking. And the worst part of the trick, the cruelest part, is that you will not notice it happening. You will only notice the result. You will look back from somewhere old and tired and ask, how did I get here so fast? And there will be no answer, because nobody was keeping track. There is one more thing I want to say before I let you go. The physicists, the real ones, the ones who work on this problem in laboratories and at chalkboards, they have not solved the deeper question. They have not figured out why subjective time exists at all. The universe could, in principle, run perfectly well without anyone inside it experiencing anything. The atoms would still do what atoms do. The clocks would still tick, but there would be no one feeling the seconds go by. No one would notice that some Tuesdays are different from other Tuesdays. The universe does not need experiencers. It does not require us. And yet here we are, experiencing, counting our Tuesdays, comparing them, feeling some of them as long, and some of them as short, and some of them as gone. We do not know why we do this. We do not know what experience is, in physical terms. It might be the deepest unsolved problem in all of science. So when I tell you that subjective time is unreliable, that it speeds up as you age, that it deletes your routine years, I am also telling you that subjective time is somehow the only kind of time you actually have. The clocks on the wall keep going whether you are paying attention or not. But the time that belongs to you, the time of your life, only exists for as long as you are noticing it. Stop noticing it, and it stops being yours. So go and notice things. That is the whole lesson. Go and notice things you have not noticed before. The brain rewards novelty with memory, and memory is the only thing that in the end you actually keep. The seconds will pass either way. The question is whether you are going to keep any of them, and that question is not answered by physics. It is answered by you, every week, whether you know it or not. I want to leave you with one specific question. I want you to think about it before you sleep tonight. What is one thing you could do next week that would force your brain to make a new folder? Just one thing. It does not have to be big. It does not have to be a trip around the world. It just has to be something your brain has not categorized before. Tell me what it is.